my name is Sonal Swain, and I want to welcome you to the 2019 E=MC² Symposium. This year has been different than most because none of my fellow EMCers have done this before, but this year is still characterized by immense growth, both with our research and with ourselves. So we want to take a moment to thank Mr. Bott and Ms. Gergen for everything they've done. And we also want to thank you for taking your time to be here and to listen to our stories, and for some of us, our memories. My first memory is from a weekend trip to Puri, India when I was 6 years old. I remember walking down the crowded streets, noticing children with limbs amputated incorrectly, tattered clothing, begging for compassion with tin cans. I also remember walking down these streets and watching hundreds of thousands of people walk down with no regard for these children. Inspired by my experience, I went home that weekend and I collected every rupee coin that I could get my hands on. I came back the next weekend, and as I walked back down those streets, I dropped the little rupee coins into the tin cans. I watched as only a few coins could bring so much happiness from the children and so much gratitude from the parents. At that time, giving back a few rupee coins was enough to make me feel like I'd done something. Of course, I had not changed any of the family situations, but I'd still done something. As I grew up, these little acts of kindness stopped meaning as much. In fact, they began to mean nothing. I felt like I wasn't making enough of an impact on the community around me, and whenever I tried to do something, it was lost in the vastness of the problem. So, when I visited India this past summer, I was determined to make a tangible difference, both on the community and maybe even myself. So, I spent 2 weeks at the Digant Institute of Intellectual Disabilities in a small rural town in Odisha, India. This nonprofit school was a safe haven for children with disabilities. Approximately 30 of them ranged from 5 years old to 30 years old. But it lacked a lot of the basic necessities like running water, electricity, sanitary bathrooms, and teaching resources that you and I enjoy at Guilderland. Nonetheless, I was determined to use my previous experiences with working with children with disabilities to help the teachers at Digant come up with comprehensive learning plans with their limited resources. And I will admit, it was a lot harder than I expected it to be, but it was also one of the most rewarding experiences of my life. So, when I returned to the US, I brought with me this newfound curiosity and this passion for the Indian special education system, but more importantly, the public opinions that shaped it. And I will stand here and admit that I spent the last 9 months just complaining about the system. I ranted for hours to Mr. Bott and Ms. Gergen and my fellow EMCers about how I believed that the system was developing too slowly, or how the general public was not doing nearly enough to advance Indian society towards inclusivity. But I haven't given it the credit that it deserves. Over the past few decades, in an effort to decrease the number of uneducated children, especially those with disabilities, the Indian government has passed crucial laws such as the Persons with Disabilities Act and the Rehabilitation Council Act of India. And additionally, the recently developed Special Olympics has done a tremendous job of bringing both the stories and the talents of people with disabilities to the forefront of Indian society. However, these actions and these policies have not completely developed the system, but they are steps in the right direction. Albeit they are small steps, but it is progress nonetheless, and that has to mean something. As for me, I have had a very difficult year. I've struggled with my own identity, my own passions, my commitments, my unmet expectations, but I've had to realize that I'm not a finished product. No, I'm a work in progress. I've learned that growth is not finite, and it continues every single day. I may never be or do enough, but I know that if I can take steps, small or big, towards my goals, then that has to mean something, and that has to be enough. Truth is, it is enough. Similarly, the Indian special education system may never be perfect, or even come close to it. But one thing rings clear. Small steps towards inclusivity must be taken before leaps and bounds can be. This process can take time. It can be 5 years, or 10 years, or 100 years. But as we all know, good things take time, and we must be patient both with ourselves and with the things I want. So, when I traveled back to India this past summer, I revisited Puri. But this time, instead of bringing rupee coins with me, I bought bills. Now, it may not seem like a big improvement, but it was an improvement. And again, I may not have made a substantial difference on any of the family's lives, but I can only hope that the ripple effect of my small acts of kindness magnified to a much larger scale. And when I travel back to India in just a few days, this time I'm bringing with me my time and my compassion, my humanity, both to the streets of Puri, but also to how I view the special education system, and maybe even to myself. Thank you. So next up, I would like to introduce Jonah Rosenberg up to the stage.
I just have the slide turn and make sure you turn it on, okay? It's on. Good evening. My name is Jonah Rosenberg, and before we get started tonight, I need to ask you all one very important question. Are you happy? Just by a show of hands, how many of you said yes to that? Did anybody say no? Well, regardless of your answer, tonight I'm going to show you the key to happiness. Starting off the year, I asked the age-old question, does money actually equal happiness? And simply put, no, it doesn't. In fact, happiness is the act of balancing. It's a constant balancing act. Now, I read a book called Happy Money by Elizabeth Dunn and Michael Norton, and this book explored a lot of complex relationships between how people spend their money. And the book breaks it down into two easily understandable categories, material purchases and experiential, and material being handbags or shoes, etc. Now, what was found is that people often value material items more than experiential purchases, and this comes down to prioritization. Humans, more often than not, fail to identify what they want and what they need, and we often value what we want higher than what we need, and this can create discrepancies in how we spend our money. This Wall Street Journal graph titled Lasting Effects shows just that. While people in the pre-purchase forecast thought the material purchase would give them more happiness and ranked the experiential purchase lower, over time, 4 weeks to be exact, the experiential purchase actually yielded more happiness. And unlike a material purchase where the happiness plateaus and then eventually falls off, an experiential purchase can actually grow over time. Now, why? I'm willing to bet for any of you who've had a memorable experience, it didn't happen alone. Most experiences happen with people, people being the second variable in my happiness equation. Now, people take on a very important role. They tend to fill a void that money can't just simply do on its own. And one quote that particularly stuck out to me by Dr. Randy Hartman, he said, investing in someone is something they will remember once you're gone. Because unlike a one-time monetary transaction, one and done, investing in a person lasts a lifetime. It's a win-win situation for both the giver and the person being invested in. Now, this theme is explored in many literature throughout history. How many of you here tonight have read The Great Gatsby? That's what I thought, quite a few of you. Now, The Great Gatsby, for those who don't remember, the main protagonist, Gatsby, is one of the most affluent men in New York City. He has anything and everything he can ever want, except one thing, the love of his life, Daisy. Now, Daisy is Gatsby's people aspect, per se, if you take the happiness equation into effect. He cannot get this one person-to-person contact, and it throws a wrench in his entire happiness. Now, besides just focusing on people, there may just be one more thing that's more important, and that's time. Time, I think, is the most important variable in my equation because it can be applied to every single one of us in this room tonight, because we all have the same 24 hours in one day. And circling back to prioritization of wants and needs, some people fail to prioritize their time. I watched a documentary on Netflix called Happy. And this documentary takes a look at how people's time prioritization can impact their happiness. And a small country, Bhutan, created a new measurement system called GNH, Gross National Happiness. And it shows happiness per person in an entire country. And what was found is actually quite interesting. In countries where people prioritized their work over experience and any other thing, everything else, such as Japan, as the documentary tended to focus on, it drives their happiness down fast. And in fact, it's so prevalent in Japan that people don't focus on their health or anything. They just focus on work, work, work. They actually can work themselves to death. It's so prevalent that they created a word for it, karoshi. Now, a decade-long longitudinal study done by CBS found that from 1997 all the way until 2012, that Americans were opting to spend less time in office spaces and more time with family and friends. And with that, we saw a positive correlation with happiness. So what does all of this mean? We've talked about time, we've talked about people, and we talked about money. All three very important things on their own, but when we combine them into this equation, it really helps understand how happiness is sustainable. Because happiness is a constant balancing act, like I said before. And with respect to time, it's not a one and done deal. Once you're happy, you have to sustain that. You're not just going to be happy all the time. It's still a constant balancing act. And I can't be there every step of the way saying, don't buy this, or don't spend time with this person, or I can't tell you how to do any of that. But the only thing I can do is give you this equation, because we all deserve to be happy, and I feel like the equation can help us do just that. Thank you. I'd like to welcome to the stage Patul Amaneni.
Imagine if there was a robot that looked exactly like you, sitting to your right. A robot that spoke like you, that moved like you, that thought like you. Now, that's what a majority of people think of when they hear the words artificial intelligence, and that's what I studied this year as part of EMC. This evolution in computer science started back in the mid-1900s, and there used to be computers the size of entire bedrooms, and they would only run simple tasks. And in the 70 years since then, we've evolved to handheld devices that can run much more complicated codes, much more efficiently, without having a whole bedroom worth of circuits and wires. And now we're evolving into technology known as artificial intelligence, which is able to complete a task without the help of a human, using neural networking, deep learning, and machine learning. But with the rise of this new technology, we have to ask ourselves, what laws and ethics have to be put in place? Currently, most follow the laws that Isaac Asimov set up in his 1940 collection, Runaround. His laws were, a robot may not injure a human, or through an action, allow a human being to come to harm. Second, a robot must obey the orders given to it by a human, as long as those don't conflict with the first law. And third, a robot must protect its own existence, as long as that existence does not conflict with the first and second law. Now, these laws are pretty practical and can be used to make artificial intelligence and robotics safer. But this also brings up the question of, because he caused many contradictions in his later books, if these are the laws that we should use to govern what a robot can and cannot do. Since then, we've evolved. And in 2015, a bot named Eugene Goosman passed the Turing test for the first time. The Turing test is a test that tests a bot's ability to fool a human into thinking that it's human. And Goosman did this brilliantly by fooling about half of the raters. And this goes to show that bots have almost an unlimited amount of resources when it comes to interacting with humans and basically triggering our reward system. And they're already doing this toward using clickbait headlines and through video games. However, this also brings up Asimov's laws and poses the question of, are these really the ones that we should govern once again? Because Gooseman is violating almost all of them. Now, jobs is something that a majority of people are worried about when we think about AI. Mainly physically work-dominated industries, such as construction and trucking. If we take a deeper look into trucking, we can see that if self-driving trucks, promised by Tesla's Elon Musk, become readily available in the coming years, then the truckers could be out of their jobs. So what are they going to do after that? If we continue on this note, we also have to ask, where will the money made by AI go? With truckers out of their work and with people at the top of an AI-driven company collecting all the revenue, there'll be an even wider wealth gap than that is already present. Artificial intelligence can also be applied to jobs where they require a long amount of hours, such as news anchoring, and this is already being used in China. Artificial intelligence can also be applied in our educational system. Although it won't be able to completely eliminate teachers from the educational system, it would be able to help them improve and better engage all their students. Across America, classroom sizes are increasing and the number of teachers aren't. Therefore, there's a larger amount of students who may not feel exactly engaged during the teacher's lesson, and therefore artificial intelligence could be used to personalize plans for them. In China, they're actually using this to sense distracted students and giving feedback to teachers so that they can improve their lesson plans and hopefully engage all the students in their next lesson. Artificial intelligence is even being used right now. Facebook is collecting a large amount of data on all of us, and they're using that to send us ads and products that we may be interested in and enticing us to maybe purchase those products. However, this, with Asimov's laws, although they were created for bots back in the 1940s, and they aren't really going to be able to be applied to artificial intelligence. Therefore, we have to change those laws, because if those laws don't adapt, if we're not able to change them, then AI could be writing our laws for us. Now, I want to bring you back to the robot sitting right next to you. And I want to ask you, what can you do to adapt to that robot? Because AI is coming. What are you going to do? Thank you. Next up, we have Amy Meng. She's a freshman, and she's going to talk to you about personality traits.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Amy, and I am currently a freshman at Guilderland High School. I would like to begin by asking a question. Do you guys consider yourself to be an introvert or an extrovert? By a show of hands, can I see if you guys consider yourself an introvert? And who considers themselves an extrovert? That's really cool. Over the summer, my youth group went to ice cream, and one of my friends had asked me if I was an introvert or an extrovert, and I had thought I was an introvert because I would consider myself to be more quiet, and an extrovert is somebody who I view as being more outgoing and more of like a leader. So Susan Cain, who is the author of 2 books, Quiet and Quiet Power, she is also an American psychologist who's done a lot of research on introversion and extroversion. She defines an introvert as somebody who recharges and gains energy from spending time alone, whereas an extrovert is somebody who finds energy from spending time with other people. But of course, there isn't such a harsh divide between the two groups of people, but rather there's a spectrum. So if you pretend that the purple side is an introvert and the red side is extrovert, in the middle, around where the green is, would probably be a group of people called ambiverts. And if I were to place myself on the spectrum, it'd probably be like way to the left of purple. And also mentioned in Kane's book is the rubber band theory, which is the theory that an introvert can be stretched and stretched, but there's a certain breaking point, like how rubber bands will break eventually if too much weight is placed on them. And then they will snap back to their original state. And so I would like to ask the question, is it possible for us to step outside of our comfort zone? And is it possible for us to stretch a little bit? But there are many layers to this question, and one being that genetics may play a bigger role than we may have once thought. Dr. Jerome Kagan, who is an American psychologist, he also studied introversion and extroversion. He did a study on babies and developed the Kagan theory, which was a study done on babies. He stimulated them with loud noises, bright colors, and strong smells to see if they were highly or lowly reactive after they were stimulated. And the lowly reactive babies were usually the extroverted ones, and the highly reactive were usually the introverted ones. This may be the opposite of what you may think, but it's actually because introverts, they are already receiving a lot of stimulation, so any more stimulation, any more further stimulation would push them over the edge, causing them to be highly reactive. And for babies, this may look like kicking, screaming, and crying, whereas a lowly reactive may not show as much change before and after stimulation. So this study shows that there are already predetermined traits even from birth, like personality traits, because the environment has not done much to shape the personalities of babies. And even though genetics plays a huge role in our personality types, I believe if we are passionate about something and if we really care about something, we would be willing to step outside of our comfort zone, and we are able to. For me, every Friday and every Sunday I go to church. I am very active in my youth group, and there have been some moments at church, like sharing my testimony in front of the congregation, and sharing about my mission trip in front of the congregation, which I did a couple of weeks ago, and sharing in small groups, which are not very small to me. They have at least 9 people, which I consider fairly large, but many of those times were really enjoyable, even though I would consider it to be outside of my comfort zone because public speaking is not comfortable. And if we look at the world's leaders today, we may first think immediately that they're all extroverts because of the large social network that they have. But if we look closely, we have leaders like Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, Eleanor Roosevelt, and Rosa Parks, who are introverted leaders. And I'm sure along the way to get to where they are, to impacting the world, it has not been smooth sailing and all easy, but there have probably been moments where they've had to give presentations and work in large groups. And so I encourage you guys that the next time there's a barrier or an uncomfortable place to step outside of your comfort zone, I encourage you to do so. This may look like rising up as a leader or to take the time to build a deep relationship. I encourage you to do so because I believe there will be good things that come out of it. And remember, like a rubber band, we are able to be stretched, but unlike a rubber band, when we are stretched, we don't become weaker and thinner, but we become stronger. Thank you. Next we have Riley. He will be going to Nashville to study music.
Hi, guys. I swear I'm not a serial killer. When I look back on this year, I see myself in my basement, angrily hunched over my laptop, wondering how I was going to complete the impossible task I had set for myself. You see, I came into this year with a lofty goal. In the first quarter, produce a 5-song EP. In the second quarter, score a short film. And in the third and fourth quarter, do varied musical genre pieces. Let's just say this didn't pan out. Here I am close to graduation, and my EP is just releasing June 17th. I could easily list for you all the issues and technical difficulties that caused this delay, but first I need to address something else that will help me in doing so. Music has changed. It's no longer just Hollywood big shots and $50,000 studios. It's kids like me in their basements. With new technology, anyone can make music. With this in mind, some guitars and some mics and a lot of vigor, I planned to go and make my songs sound just as good as the ones on the radio. Little did I know I was fighting an uphill battle. You see, in today's music, it takes 8 or more people to actually make a song. In 2007, BBC found that only 14 of the year's top 100 songs were written by a single person. In 2017, Music Week magazine found that the majority of hit singles had 4 to 5 writers on them, with Drake's One Dance having 8 and Mark Ronson's Uptown Funk having 13. Sure, I wrote all my own music, so I had that part done, but I still had to do lots of other things. I also had to fill the role of singer, instrumentalist, background vocalist, producer, audio engineer, mixing engineer, mastering engineer, and publisher. Yeah, it's a lot. Not only did I have to do this, but I had to do it in 4 months, contrary to the 8 to 12-month period it takes to produce most albums. Not only that, I was dwarfed by the amount of equipment I have. While these professional studios have $10,000 mixers and $500 condensers, I was using my MacBook and a $90 dented microphone. I eventually would figure out that I needed, my one true problem though, was the fact that I was going it alone. I would eventually figure this out, but first I had to reach my breaking point. I had been working on my song Stand Still for about a month. This song I had done a little bit differently than others. Instead of writing the song and the lyrics and working on the chords and then recording it, I actually produced the entire track and all the music first, then working on the vocals and lyrics. This quickly became an issue because the vocals that I had written didn't actually sound good for my voice. Take after take, I hated the results, and I ended up putting the song on pause, not knowing what to do with it. Eventually, I realized that I needed someone else to sing it. This is when I reached out for the first time to a junior here, Afton Service. Adding her to the song not just improved it, but she made it sound better, allowed me to use the background vocals that I had created, and change the way that I sang the song. Also, as a songwriter, it was super fun to direct someone, but also have them make it their own. It made me very confident in the career path that I've set out on. But even with that collaboration being so good, the true takeaway was the gateways that it opened for me. After this, I just wanted to keep working with others. On my song Thinking About, I had a piano part that I just couldn't play well. It was then that I asked another junior here at the school, Donald Goldstein. He not only improved the part, but gave me the idea to record a full live grand piano, which was a task, let me just say. After that, my friend Aman Navarro told me I should add drum tracks to my song Stand Still. After about a week of trying, I couldn't actually come up with a good part. Luckily, over the summer, I had done a program at Berklee College of Music where I met lots of talented musicians. In about 2 days, with the power of Snapchat and Google Drive, I had a finished drum track all the way from LA from my friend Nick. Even with all my tracks being done, I still had to learn how to master them and then actually do it. I didn't really have the time left because it was coming down to the crunch. So I reached out to a faculty member at College of St. Rose. He mastered my tracks, giving me much more time to work on things, and also made them sound better than anything I could have done. So you're probably asking, Riley, what's the point? Get to it. And I would say, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, because you helped me, and that's the message. You can work alone and make a good product, but why not work with others and make a great product? This isn't some action movie. You don't have to be a lone wolf and brood in the corner. As long as you surround yourself with people who can help you, you're going to succeed. So as my journey after high school takes me to Nashville, Tennessee, I'll be in dorm rooms, classrooms, and practice rooms. I'll be in auditoriums, bar stages, and recording studios. Wherever I go, even if it's a basement, I'll make sure I'm not alone. So we're going to be moving into our 10-minute intermission, and during it, some samples of my EP are going to be playing, and it's coming out Monday on Spotify, iTunes, and Amazon, and more. So thanks. We have cookies and punch outside.
When I hear the birds singing, it's never a surprise. I'm in love with autumn, that much is true. I'm in love with autumn, but I'm falling for you too. For you too. I'm in love with autumn, and my hoodies and my jeans. All of the beauty of the soon-to-be resting trees. The smell of coffee and this hot mug in my hands. And when the leaves are falling, it looks like they start to dance. I'm in love with autumn, that much is true. I'm in love with autumn, but I'm falling for you too. For you too. Sound of crinkling golden leaves beneath your shoe. And when I wake up and it's cold outside, it's okay, 'cause I like to see the dough. I know I'm changing because of you, so it's cool that the season's changing with me too. I'm in love with autumn, that much is true. I'm in love with autumn, but I'm falling for you too. Falling for you too. Falling for you too. For you too. I'm usually the nicest person, so why is nobody nice to me? Done with all the niceties, cause they're not quite working out for me. Everything will seem fine, then everything's a blur. I'm tired of looking up, but somehow I still get hurt. Oh, do one bad thing and a bad thing happens. Do some good things, but good things don't happen to me. I have done my charity, but I've had my fill. Screw karma, cause karma's got me in a standstill. Oh, all my friends are in. I want the drama to end. Most of them just pretend and talk shit when your back's turned to them. Surrounded by people all the time, so why am I so lonely? I'm tired of lonesomely saying there's plenty of fish in an empty sea. Oh, oh, oh. Do one bad thing and a bad thing happens. Do some good things, but good things don't happen to me. I could do some charity, but I've had my fill. Screw karma, cause karma's got me in a standstill. Oh, oh, bad thing happens. Do some good things, but good things don't happen to me. I have done my charity, but had my fill. Screw karma, cause karma's got me in a standstill. Cause karma's got me in a goddamn standstill. Ooh. Stand still. didn't feel the chemicals. That's what you said to me. Why couldn't you just say no instead of blaming it on chemistry? You were my perfect girl, and you could have been my world. Well, I know that's a little cliche, but it felt so good. I know it could have been that way, and I just can't move on. And when the rain is falling down the window pane, there'll still be thoughts of you inside my brain. When I'm humming to a song that makes me blue, I'll still be thinking about, I'll still be thinking about you. Well, now I'm left with you, not knowing how I really feel. We agreed to be just friends, but for me that wasn't real. And I kept waiting patiently, stupidly, idiotically for you. Even though you were next to me, I was never in your view, and I just can't quit. When the rain is falling down the window pane, there'll still be thoughts of you inside my brain. When I'm humming to a song that makes me blue, I'll still be thinking about, I'll still be thinking about you. Although I thought I had it so many times before, it was all in my head. Now my heart is lying broken on the floor, and I can't take it anymore. I can't take it anymore. And when the rain is falling down the window pane, there'll still be thoughts of you inside my brain. And when I'm humming to a song that makes me blue, I'll still be thinking about, I'll still be thinking about you. I'll still be thinking about, I'll still be thinking about.
Hello? 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 What? Oh, so now it wanted turns on. Okay. I guess I'll be carrying this for my presentation. Welcome back from intermission. I hope you guys all enjoyed your cookies and punch, and I think that was it. Those were all the refreshments, so cookies and punch. I thought Riley was going to introduce me, but that doesn't seem to be the case. My name... I'm sorry, I didn't read it that way. I'm sorry, Riley. Okay, so my name is Alyssa Coe, and I have been studying over the course of this year the science of human attraction. Now, what that means is, well, pretty much what that meant to me was that at the end of this year, at the symposium, where I'm standing right now, I would be wheeling out a giant whiteboard right about now and have this giant formula on it that pretty much explained every reason why it is that you're attracted to what you're attracted to. So every single one of you in the audience could think to yourself, huh, that's why I like blondes. And it would be really cool, but then come October, which was the second month out of our 9-month project, which tells you a lot, I suddenly realized, unfortunately, there is no formula. The science is really vague for something as personal as human attraction. So I had to go back to the drawing board, and what I came up with was a list of rules, 9 rules, 1 rule per month that I've been a part of EMC. So they're all about everything that I've learned this year when it comes to relationships, not only romantic, but platonic, and in a work environment as well. And for some of you guys who might be thinking, God, I feel so bad for her boyfriend if she has one, well, you should feel bad. This is my boyfriend. If you happen to see him in the audience, give him a nod of condolences. He really needs it right about now. So before I go on with my rules, I just want to preface something really, really quick, which is these rules are not for you. I'll get back to that a little bit later, but these rules are not for you. They are for me, and you will see why soon enough. So here it is, my 9 rules for this year. Rule number 1, everything can't be perfect, and I know how hard it is to hear that because I don't even want to be saying it. Of course, you want everything to be perfect. The media constantly portrays that everything should be perfect, but unfortunately, life is not Hollywood, and we are not movie stars. I wish I was a movie star, though, because then my life would be perfect. Unfortunately, it is not, and I have problems, I have rocky roads, but I get through them, you get through them, and in a relationship, that's what it's about, getting through them together. That leads into rule number 2, which is, I'm not gonna be perfect either. Hate to break it to you, and mostly to myself. This rule is mostly for me. Rule number 3, image is subjective. I think these first 3 rules, they kind of come in a little bit of a bubble altogether. What this means is pretty much, yeah, sure, we want to be perfect. Yes, that's established. We want to look perfect, we want to act perfect, and we want to seem perfect to everyone else, but more importantly to ourselves. We want to feel perfect. Unfortunately, sometimes that can come at the cost of our health, which is difficult because, some people are going to want to, do push-ups at midnight while nobody's looking in order to look like Fabio, but then you're sort of like, your sleep is kind of up here, and I'll be honest, I would choose sleep. Rule number 4, there is hope to be found in solidarity. What this means is that not every part of a relationship is going to be super fun and exciting and magical. Not every date that you go on has to be super cool and fantastic and exciting. Sometimes what matters is just sitting next to someone and you get your work done and they get their work done and you're just there working through the hard stuff together. Because sometimes the hard stuff is really, really, really hard to do. But when there's someone there next to you working through the same thing, it can make it a little bit easier. Rule number 5. It's okay to hold my hand while riding the roller coaster, and I know what you're thinking, this is a really stupid name for a rule, but let me explain. So one of the big things that I did over the course of this year was study love languages. Now, pretty much what that means is that different people express their attraction, their care, and their affection in different ways. Personally, what this means for me is, I may not be the kind of person that's gonna reach out my hand to hold yours, but that doesn't mean that if you do the same thing that I won't appreciate it, because that's your love language, and that deserves to be appreciated and understood. And over the course of time, we'll grow to understand that and appreciate it and appreciate you. Rule number 6, talk to me. Even if it's hard, actually, especially if it's hard, because I know how easy it is to just let things go, let things slide, and then all of a sudden you're really, really mad for no reason and you just can't get over it. That's a bit of an issue because there's something ingrained in us that just automatically says that every single argument, every single disagreement has to be a fight. That's not the case. When you're talking with someone and you disagree, when you talk through it, it brings you closer together, yes, but it also makes you guys stronger as individuals and as people together, because it helps you to learn more about that person. Our differences bring us closer. Rule number 7, symbiosis is key. Now, symbiosis is a biology term, which means that two organisms are working together to be beneficial to one another. Personally, what this means is that every relationship that you should be in should be something that is beneficial to you. Every single journey that you go on with someone should bring some sort of further growth for yourself and for that other person as well. That also comes with the territory that if you're in a relationship where things aren't going well, where things are becoming detrimental, it's okay to let go of that. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person, it just means that maybe it wasn't just the best moment. Great people are going to be great people, but they're not always going to be great together, and that's okay. And that doesn't detract from all the great times that you may have had once. Rule number 8, you are human. And what that means is that every single one of your facets is so wonderful and unique and beautiful and deserves to be appreciated. You deserve to be appreciated. You deserve someone who's going to appreciate you. That leads me to my last rule, rule number 9, and I want to preface this for like the 3 billionth time. This rule is not just to be taken in a romantic sense. This is for every family member that I have, every friend I've ever made, every person who's ever walked side by side with me, whether that be literally or metaphorically, every person that has just asked me the simple question, how are you doing today? I love you. Now you might be thinking, for a project that seems to circle all around love, why is it that I've decided to save the word itself, love, for now, close to the end of my project? And I would agree with you, except for the fact that to me, love is something that is so important. Love is something that means so much. Love is so worthwhile and should be treasured and should not be taken lightly. So when I say I love you, I mean it. I mean it for every single one of you in this room, whether I know you or not, because you are human, you are important, and you are appreciated. That means you deserve love automatically, and that comes from me. Now, you might be thinking, with all these 9 rules, why should I be listening to you? I'm a 15-year-old girl who barely knows anything except for all the A-push I've crammed into my head over the past month, which seems to have not been a whole lot. So why should you listen to me? And the answer is, you shouldn't. You should not listen to me. You should not listen to these rules because, like I said earlier, these rules are for me. They're not for you. This template, however, this template of knowing yourself, this template of knowing what makes you tick, what you enjoy, what means so much to you, what matters in a relationship, that is what you should be taking away from this, not the verbatim words. It's important to know yourself first in a relationship, because if you expect that someone is going to know you better than you know you, you are wrong. And it's okay to be wrong. But it's okay to understand that you can be right. It's okay to understand that it takes time to create. And these rules do not come easy. It took me an entire year, and I'm still not done. I spent an entire 9 months thinking about this question. I love you because blank. I want you guys to take a second to internalize that. Why is it that we love people the way we do? I spent an entire year trying to figure it out, and I'm still not quite sure. So what I propose to you is a new way of thinking, a new perspective, one that's personal, one that's intimate. Try thinking about this. I love you because. Thank you very much. Next up is my favorite and our favorite resident Starbucks addict, Adam Keddick.
That is amazing.
This year, I studied theatrical lighting. Now, not many people may think about all that goes into lighting a play or a musical. For example, if I were to put a red spotlight on me right now, what emotion would that convey? If you were to guess anger, you'd be correct. But what about blue? Now, blue is not going to convey the same anger that red does. But rather, if you were to guess a calmness or even a sadness, you'd be correct. And what about white? Well, white can speak to the transparency, the innocence, the rawness of a scene. All these changes are all coming from just one spotlight, and theaters sometimes have hundreds of different lights. Throughout the course of a musical, as actors learn their lines, as the ensemble synchronizes, as the audio, lighting, and scenic design become finalized, we begin to run a rehearsal known as cue to cue. In a cue to cue rehearsal, we focus on the bigger picture. So instead of focusing on every movement, every light change, and every line, we focus on the major ones. This can be very useful, seeing the bigger picture, but eventually we will have to run a full rehearsal with every line, every light change, and every movement. My director would always tell me that you can't live cue to cue. You can't live with your head in the script. You have to watch the stage, because if something important is happening, you'll miss it if you're looking in the book. You got to keep your eyes on stage, because it's the small details that matter. I learned that not only for lighting, but for my life, the small details matter the most. Going into EMC, I thought it would be rather easy. I thought I would get my points right away and be done with it, despite what the coordinators and the former students had told me. I thought that I would live one big project to the next and be done with it rather quickly. But with junior year comes other stresses like AP exams, college, and other activities. All of this started to pile up on me and started to weigh me down. I was focused on the bigger picture of all of these rather than all the work that had to go into them individually. I was at the start line, but I was already looking for the finish line, not realizing all the work that I had to put in between. In theater and in musicals, if we mess up one night, we have the luxury of going back the next night to fix our mistakes. In fact, we have a whole 30 days to prepare for just 3 show nights. But in life, we do not have that same luxury. We are living essentially in the show night, and the cues that we miss or the decisions that we make are permanent. The little details are vital. Little things make big things happen. I found that very accurate for this year for me. All the conversations that I would have, all the studying, and all the journals that I would write would add up to make a bigger project. No production is going to be perfect, though. An actor is bound to forget his lines. A light will inevitably fail me one night, and a scene will not look the same twice around. And as cliche as it is, life isn't going to be perfect either. You're bound to miss a cue here and there. But it's not about what we miss. It's about getting ourselves back up and brushing ourselves off and getting ready for the next cue. Lighting design is only one aspect of a musical, though. There's the lighting design, there's audio design, there's stage managing, there's dancing, there's acting, and of course there's directing. All of these small details add up to make one big to make one big cue. And that is the same in life. All the small details will add up to make one big cue. So I leave you with this. Focus on the little details, because the little details will make big things happen. And after all, it is show night. Thank you. Next up is a senior that is attending the University of Buffalo, Sam Dlakwa.
And it was good because that's not how it was supposed to start. So we fade in. We see a little blonde girl. We see her opposite a giant rock climbing wall that her daycare rented for the day. She's strapped in, ready to start climbing for the second time. I'm gonna reach the top, and then I'll tell my mom I reached it twice. She starts climbing. She's about halfway up, and her arms are really tired because she already completed this trek once, but she just knows she has to keep going. We can see her. She's almost at the top. She can see that little bell that will give her the ring of success, but it's just out of her reach. So she uses all her strength to push herself up, and she jumps, and she falls. When she lands, she doesn't even try and stand up. She's already crying. A counselor walks up to her and asks, "Well, why are you crying?" "I wanted to reach it twice." "Well, you already reached it once. That's really cool, and a lot of the other kids didn't do that." And this helps, and she stops crying. But as she's holding her counselor's hand, walking back to her daycare, she just can't stop thinking about how she didn't reach the top, about how she failed. Would you call this little girl a failure? I would. Why? Because that was me. This year when I started EMC, I was super excited. It's my senior year. I'm gonna take easy classes and be able to focus on the more interesting ones. Unfortunately, that's not exactly how it panned out. My first topic was midlife crisis, what caused them, who gets them, and most importantly, how to avoid one. I would do some research, and my advisors would encourage me to journal about what I'd learned, or maybe plan an SDA, that's a self-designed assignment. And I found that whenever I sat down to journal, I never thought that what I had researched was enough. I never thought that I had enough to write that would validate me writing a journal. And instead of talking to my advisors and asking for advice, I just didn't. This habit followed me again when I changed my topic to happiness. I wanted to see if there was a way we could pinpoint it and a way to better understand it. Unfortunately, after another month of not producing anything for the thought that I wasn't good enough, I switched my topic again. I landed on my final topic, film, and how emotions are conveyed through it, as well as how directors demonstrate different techniques. So, after winter break, we have our midterm that we deemed January Day. Our advisors gave us very loose outlines of what we had to do. We essentially had a trifold, and we had to have a presentation related to our topic. So with the Oscars coming up and studying film, I decided to try and predict the winner for Best Picture. So once I had a direction to go in, I started researching my butt off. The top image you can see are the past 10 years of Oscar winners, and I took down dates, or not dates, stats, like if they were a true story, the rating, facts about the main character, the length, the setting, a lot of stuff. And then 2 days before January Day, the nominees for Best Picture were announced, which is the lower graphic. So I saw all the patterns that had occurred in the past 10 years of Oscar winners. Some feedback. And I applied those to the nominees for this year. So after doing all that, I decided that Vice had the highest probability of winning because it had the most in common with the past Oscar winners. So after a full day of telling people my decision and showing how confident I was that Vice would win, there was in my bedroom on a Sunday night, exactly 1 month after January Day, watching the Oscars. I remember pacing around my room because I was so excited and looking at my trifold I had laid out on my bed and watching the announcers, and the last most anticipated award of the night, Best Picture. And just in my head, it was just Vice, 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 Vice. And then they slowly open the envelope, and I have so much anticipation, and they start sliding it out, and the winner for Best Picture is Green Book. Green Book won. My heart sank. I didn't know why it had won. I mean, Vice had the highest probability. The numbers didn't lie, so what happened? I was devastated. After all that work and all that effort that I put in, and I failed. I felt defeated. One thing I learned in EMC this year is that how you frame a shot can drastically affect how the audience will respond to a shot, whether it be in film or photography. As you can see here, I'll use myself as the subject of the shot. If it was filmed at an eye level, it makes the audience connect with the character more, but if the angle was taken from higher up, it could make the subject seem very insignificant and powerless. So, keeping that in mind, if you'll indulge me, think of a time when you failed. Got one? Think of a time when you didn't do as well as you wanted to. So, take that, freeze that image, and I'll show you how to reframe it. I'll use January Day as an example. Sure, I may not have guessed the winner of Best Picture, but I learned a lot about the Academy and movies and the Oscars. I may not have gotten the 100 on that project, but I had a lot of fun doing it. So, now we're here. When I was writing the script, it felt like I was editing a movie. I was choosing which part of the year that I would put in and how to connect them. And as my advisors have told us this entire time, the most important thing, I was trying to figure out how to tell a story. At first, I didn't know what I wanted to leave you guys with. I was in the same mindset that I was at the beginning of the year. I never thought, or at least I didn't think, that what I had done would warrant me being up here. I didn't think that what I had done was enough to put me on the same level as my counterparts. I thought I had failed the class and failed my peers and failed my advisors, and that was holding me back. So that's when I decided to reframe EMC. Sure, I had a hard time this year, but I also have to remember that students aren't made for such a creative class that lacks a lot of structure. There isn't one answer. And I may not have found the formula for a perfect film, but I learned a lot about myself. I learned that I'm a perfectionist, and because of that, I don't like to ask for help when I need it. And I also learned that people want to help you. You just have to take the first step. And at least I'm starting to learn that failure is okay. A lot of the times we see the world in black and white. You either failed or you succeeded. And one is bad and one is good. And that's just not true. Because when you fail, you learn. And when you fail, you grow. And I don't think that's that bad. So, next time you feel down on yourself and you feel like you didn't do good enough or that you should have done something different to do better, just take that memory, freeze it, and reframe it. Thank you. If I may introduce a junior, Alan Wang, who will be talking about human morality and all that jazz. Kill it. Oh, I gotta turn my mic off.
Hello, my name is Alan, and some of you may remember me from the January midterm day, when I was the kid who sort of advocated for cannibalism, but we're going to forget about that for today. And today, before I delve into my research, I'd first like to share a little fun fact about myself. And my parents might disagree with me about this, but I'm actually always right about everything I say and do. Because on any given day, I can pull out this nifty contraption from my pocket and post about my beliefs online through social media and get hundreds, sometimes even thousands of likes. Now this means these social media users agree with me. They've just validated my opinion into an absolute fact, like the one shown above, which is absolutely true. Now I want you all to remember this word, validation. Let me explain. So this year, I studied moral psychology, which by definition is the study of the development of the moral sense. And so I studied the works of famous moral psychologist Dr. Jonathan Haidt and his book, The Righteous Mind. And in this book, he described a theory/analogy which he calls the rider and the elephant. And so Haidt theorizes that emotions form the basis of our judgment. Now this is represented by the elephant. And the rider, which represents rationality and logical reasoning, attempts to guide that emotion. So what the rider's job is essentially to come up with any reasonable excuse to justify whatever the elephant's gut intuition, gut reaction just was. It's basically a cover-up job, if you will. And so I thought this was kind of twisted when I first learned about it because, I thought that humans were, kind of the top of the evolutionary pyramid who had fully utilized their brain capacity to come up with the most logical solution to any given situation. But that's not the case. We're kind of primitive in the sense that we rely on our emotions and intuition. So this is how our moral thinking works on the inside. But, how do we see this depicted? How do we see this shown in real life? Well, Haidt actually also theorized another theory, which he calls the moral foundations. And so Haidt describes in his book, The Righteous Mind, that every human being has various moral flavors, the moral foundations, which are currently shown on screen above. And so what happens is that every human being has varying emphases, different ratios of these moral foundations. For example, if I have a greater emphasis on care/harm, I'll morally believe that I should care for another person. And if someone has a lesser emphasis on, say, authority/subversion, they'll believe that they should not have to look up to a leader to guide them. And so what happens is that humans with these similar emphases of moral foundations, their moral matrix, they tend to band together because humans are groupish creatures who are always looking to become a part of something greater than themselves. Now, this is called the hive switch by Dr. Haidt, and it's aptly named after the behavior of bees, because bees are ultra-social creatures who have completely foregone the sense of the individual and work together to create something new. And we already see this within us humans. Take sports, for example. The reason why sports players keep coming back to play the sport is because they love the adrenaline, and they love the drive, and they love that heightened sense of belief that they can achieve anything as long as they work together. And it's an experience that you cannot have at the individual level. So with all this in mind, I created a sort of pseudo-theory this year, which I call the theory of 21st century validation. And what I mean by this is that social media is rapidly amplifying our groupish tendencies, because social media users will often get, hundreds, sometimes thousands of likes. Now, this means their opinions have been validated. And the people who are liking and retweeting these posts are those who already share similar moral matrices, because humans are groupish and stick to what they know. So as a result, people's preconceived notions are being strengthened and reinforced, and their elephants are becoming harder and harder to control. So what happens? So just imagine a time where you acted out emotionally, only to reflect upon later that what you had just said made absolutely no logical sense at all. That's your elephant running wild. Now, if you imagine that in an online context, that is when your opinion has been validated, liked, and retweeted by many others. Your rider has just lost control of the elephant. And so this is why Dr. Haidt says in his book, The Righteous Mind, that morality binds and blinds. Because this resulting non-diverse thought is simply the confirmation bias and the echo chamber on a previously unimaginable scale. So with the moral foundations theory and my pseudo-theory, the theory of 21st century validation in mind, where do we see this today? Where do we see this most applied in today's society? Well, some of you may have already guessed, and that, of course, is politics. According to the Pew Research Center, which is a nonpartisan fact tank, over 68% of adult Americans get their news from social media. And I'm sure all the Facebook, all the Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram users in the crowd will know that a lot of the stuff that shows up in their feed is political. So in terms of the moral foundations, liberals, and more loosely Democrats, actually place a greater emphasis on the care foundation. And while it might be surprising to most, conservatives, more loosely Republicans, are more evenly spread. They value each foundation more equally. And so here we have liberals and conservatives, these two varying groups with very different moral matrices. Now, because of social media, that's a conflict waiting to happen. Because in government, in Congress, there are a lot of policies that are sure to trigger very specific moral foundations. For example, take the issue of immigration. On the left here, we can see a liberal politician triggering the CARE Foundation for their supporters. Here, they believe that it is the U.S. government's role to protect many illegal immigrants who are escaping from their often oppressed countries. And here we can see they received 87,000 likes and nearly 23,000 retweets. And on the right, we can see a conservative politician. But this time, they're triggering the Fairness/Cheating Foundation. And here we can see that they believe that many illegal immigrants are often sort of gaming the system in a way, unjustly receiving benefits where it's not due. But in this case, they received even more likes and retweets. Nearly 106,000 likes and 28,000 retweets. Now, this is validation on a previously unprecedented scale. The liberal moral matrix and the conservative moral matrix are being strengthened by these hundreds of thousands of likes and retweets. Their preconceived notions are being strengthened to the point where they're unable to accept that there is a common ground between the two. Because if I had gotten this many likes and retweets, how could I possibly be wrong? There are these many people who believe in what I'm saying. So as a result, polarization is occurring. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so many more people, there's so many more topics, they're going to trigger more foundations. Take gun control, welfare, and even more. And so, at this point, it should be very obvious that liberals and conservatives both have their truths and fallacies to them. There is indeed a common ground, but because of social media and its ability to validate our preconceived notions through likes and retweets, our elephants are growing bigger and bigger in size, and our logical rider is unable to hold back that intuition and gut emotion. And so, rapid polarization is occurring and completely dividing our country, as I'm sure you can all see today. And so, what can we do to stop this? Well, first and foremost, I believe the most important thing is awareness. Awareness that no one is invulnerable to the morality reinforcing, the morality sculpting powers of social media and its ability to validate anyone's opinion through likes and retweets. All of a sudden, we are unable to accept the idea that there is another side because we are so strengthened by our beliefs and our elephants that a common ground is no longer achievable. And so I say that instead of opting for more reactionary-based social media, where sensational headlines are constantly reading Twitter's trending page, we should do our best to consume more evidence-based literature. Because if the theory of 21st century validation became a law instead, and if social media continued to validate our own beliefs for decades to come, human nature could truly be doomed as we're constantly at each other's throats. But instead of that, we should take Dr. Haidt's recommendation to heart at the end of his book, The Righteous Mind, which is, we're all stuck here for a while, so let's try to work it out. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And now, I'd like to introduce our senior, Maya Banks, who will be our closer for tonight's EMC Symposium. And I'm sure you'll all see in a second why our speeches were back to back.
Hi, my name is Maya, and I'm 18 years old. I live in a 4-bedroom house with my wonderful family, and I drive my own car. Next year, I'll be attending school in Southern California on a scholarship for lacrosse. I'm graduating high school with honors, and I plan to attend a prestigious law school one day. So, now that you know a little bit about me, I want to ask you a question. How quickly into that little introduction did you begin to judge me? A girl wearing a really sharp outfit, speaking to you from a stage about all the wonderful things I have. Let's face it, I look like the epitome of privilege right now. Did you notice my MAGA hat, by the way? If you did, you're probably assuming that I'm a big Trump-loving Republican. And if you're not a huge fan of our current leader, you probably didn't like my hat so much, and maybe you're a little bit hesitant to listen to what I have to say. But wait, hold on a minute. You don't know who I am, and we've never had a conversation before, but yet, based on those facts alone, we might already be divided. So this division that I just staged between you and me is exactly what I studied for the duration of this year, between the left and the right, the Republicans and the Democrats. And I know, after listening to so many amazing presentations this evening, I'm sure your minds are overflowing with new information, so I will try to keep my politics as interesting as possible. So when I was around 7 years old, before I knew what a political party was, I learned to eavesdrop on my parents like a professional spy. I used this inquisitive skill often, but what it gave me in return was my interest in politics. I can remember listening in on a family debate about whether or not Obama would make a good president and being absolutely fascinated. But this curiosity didn't spike until recently, right around the closing of the 2016 election. It felt as if politics were so central in everyone's minds, and a sort of unspoken, invisible divide seemed to enter through the doors of my high school. And in result of that, my questions multiplied. I wondered how it was that we all form our own unique political opinions, and what makes those on the right so different from those on the left. Over time, are the right and the left becoming more different? What role are teachers and parents and politicians supposed to take in this political divide? What about the role of a random average student like myself? So it is evident that in the aftermath of the 2016 election, political polarization did increase. And I know I said I'd keep this interesting, so don't get too scared about this slide. So, if you turn your attention to the graph on the left, you'll see 1999. And there are gaps between prioritizations of Republicans and Democrats, but still there's common ground. You can see education, Social Security, and healthcare. Now look to the graph in the middle, 10 years later, 2009. There's a little shift and there's some more gaps, but still there's common ground, like terrorism and the economy. Now look to the right, 2019. Suddenly, that common ground just seems to disappear, and gaps have emerged, just like the gaps that I saw between the walls of my high school. But it didn't end there. As you can see based off of these charts, partisan animosity increased after the 2016 election. Republicans and Democrats were willing to admit that the other was closed-minded, immoral, lazy, dishonest, and even unintelligent. And because of that, we became frustrated, scared, and angry towards each other. But it didn't end there either. It's the politically engaged that are the most polarized, the Republicans and the Democrats who actually hold power. So what does this do to us? Well, for one, it makes us more divided from those in office, but it makes us more divided from each other too. So what was I to do about all this? A random average girl from Albany, New York. I felt pretty powerless. I knew I couldn't do anything to get rid of the polarization in my own school, let alone that in the entire country. But I also knew that I had to do something that would be worth my time. So this was sort of a period of trial and error for me. I interviewed people and I sent out a survey. All of this with the same goal in my mind. I wanted answers. But all the information that I was getting just didn't feel right. There was something missing. So I came up with a simple little solution. I would just talk to people. I would have open and honest conversations with another. So I created a podcast. Here I was able to talk about issues like immigration and gun control, but they didn't turn into debates. Questions led the conversations forward. And I hope to come out of this with the same thing that I wanted before, answers. But instead, I came to a little realization. Maybe my role wasn't to ask questions for the sole purpose of getting answers. To be honest, I'm exiting this year of research with more questions than I started with, and honestly, more confusion surrounding my topic as well. But I think there's something to be said for the unknown, because we all face it, and we can all admit that we don't know. And maybe that puts us all on the same playing field. Think about how many of us in this room don't know each other. But then think about how many more of us don't know each other in this entire country. We are all so very different, we're practically strangers. But that doesn't mean that we can't work to get to know each other. And there's potential for progress here. Progress can mean a multitude of different things. Progress means having a tough conversation and disagreeing, or teaching young ones to seek facts and form political opinions, or listening to a news channel that you don't support and actually listening to it. But there is potential for progress here. So hi, my name is Maya Banks, and I'll be attending San Diego State University in the fall. I hope to study political science, and I am not a Republican. It kind of hurt me inside to put that hat on today, but research purposes, of course. And this is who I am on the surface, but in reality, you don't know who I am, and I don't know you. But we should try to get to know each other because I think we could be friends. Thank you. Okay, so now I'd just like to invite all my fellow EMCers back up on stage with me.
Good evening, everyone. Can you guys hear me all right? All right, so another round of applause for our amazing crew this year. So sort of beginning last year, we kind of decided to recognize one of the students who sort of embodies the essence of this program. And with accomplished actresses and seasoned musicians, it was really tough to choose. But our crew, we don't have a curriculum here. We have values. And those are sort of encompassed by our 5 C's. And this sort of recognition that we're going to give here tonight, it really isn't an MVP award, because you can't award the best for anything in this class, because it's impossible to measure. This person that we're giving this to tonight, though, she just spoke about questions. She asked a ton of questions, like all the time, and she was creative. She created her own podcast in order to communicate with people. She collaborated with her classmates. So tonight, we'd like to recognize one of our seniors here, Miss Maya Banks.
And we just want to give a little something to our coordinators to thank you for everything you've done for us. We are so appreciative. Thank you.
You know, guys, he's going to kill that thing, right? So we just like to thank everybody for coming out tonight. Be sure to check out their websites. Check out Riley's EP, which is going to be releasing again on Monday. But if you have any and all questions about EMC, we have previous people, we have our people that went tonight, and we have some future EMCers in the audience. So they will be speaking here a year from now. So again, thank you for coming out. Thank you for your support, and we hope to see you back next year.